President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve a new loan request of $800 million, which he said would be sourced from the World Bank. The president's letter said the fresh $800 million loan would be used to scale up the National Social Safety Net program to assist poor and vulnerable Nigerians in coping with the cost of meeting basic needs. The president stated that the funds, when approved, will be sent to the bank accounts of the identified beneficiaries. He also said the Federal Executive Council has approved his request for obtaining the loan, noting that he is waiting for the approval of the Senate before going ahead with processing of the loan. The Minister of Finance and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, announced in April that the federal government would secure an $800 million World Bank loan to be disbursed to about 50 million vulnerable Nigerians for use, which it expects to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. This effect of fuel subsidy removal is targeted at around 10 million households as part of its subsidy palliative measures. She said the disbursement is in anticipation of the planned removal regime in June. This is coming at a time Nigeria's debt profile has hit 77 trillion naira, prompting the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to warn the country against obtaining more foreign loans. The Debt Management Office also had recently announced that the debt profile of Nigeria as of December 31st rose to 46.25 trillion, or $100.3 billion. The DMO, while giving this breakdown, stated that there was an increase of over 7 trillion from what the country owed in 2021. Now, we have with us in the studio Mr. Obinnaya C. Uruakpa, a public affairs analyst, and also Hamzat Lawal, the founder of Follow the Money program, and also the chief executive of Connected Development, joining us virtually to discuss these issues. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sergey.
Yes, so what's your assessment of the state of Nigeria's economy, and how do you think the government's plan to obtain this new tranche of $800 million loan will impact on it?
Forgive me, my first statement might sound a little challenging for anyone listening this morning, so I'm not going to be sounding very optimistic. The Nigerian economy, you can say, it's on life support. Because the data is not helpful at all, whether it's from the World Bank, IMF, or from what we can see, or from the misery index that we are experiencing. It's not very, very encouraging. And if you look at the data you just reeled out, this is also from government sources, so it's not from any opposition party. We're talking about the Debt Management Office here. Now, maybe I will also add to your data to say that the head of the Debt Management Office himself, addressing the retreat of the incoming senators and members of the House of Reps, National Assembly members, said that we do not have room for extra borrowing.
I mean, the director of the Budget Office.
We do not have room for extra borrowing, because our debt to GDP ratio is not looking very good, and the data is there for us to see. And the smartest thing we can do now as a business development service provider and as someone who plays in that ecosystem, one of the things you teach MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises, or anyone running a business, is that if you find yourself in a financial hole, stop digging. Stop digging. Tell yourself the truth. If you need to sell off anything, but stop digging. What we have seen is that in 2015, both the debt owed by the states, which was just over $3 trillion, and that of the federal government was just above 7 trillion. So both of them put together was about $10 billion owed by Nigeria. But between 2015 and October 2022, according to the Debt Management Office, we have had an increase in external debts of about 288.6%, meaning that we have hit $40.6 billion in debts. Now, that's not very encouraging. The implication for you is that when you have a Fitch rating, you're going to drop from an A plus or A minus to B plus or B minus. The implication is that when you want to borrow, you borrow at a higher rate of interest. And IMF has warned that emerging nations are not supposed to go beyond a particular threshold. Nigeria has exceeded it by 1.5% for developing nations. So when you look at all of that data, data doesn't lie. It's like looking for a mirror to check the wristwatch on your wrist. Data does not lie. Now you can cut this government some slack that the issues they face with insecurity. How much could they have done? Yes, the security apparatchik was rejigged. You changed the service chiefs and a lot was done. Are you going to blame them for what's happening in Zamfara, what's happening in the northeast and all of that? Haven't efforts been made? So this is me trying to be balanced here. Yet, I believe more could have been done. But the implication of insecurity, I hope I'm not going ahead of myself, is that the farmers are not able to go to farm and farm when they're supposed to farm. And for an economy that is heavily dependent on agriculture, you need to have the farmers go to the farm, produce, so that you're not dependent on imports. I had cause to discuss on another platform about fish imports. Nigeria imports so heavily, and incidentally, we have the third longest inland waterways in the world.
All right, we'll get back to that conversation. So, Hamzat, I want to ask you this. In your opinion, do you think that the rationale behind the government acquiring this loan aligned with Nigeria's economic priorities and long-term sustainability?
Well, first, we cannot shy away from the fact that if we must take this loan, we must talk about the issue of fuel subsidy. Because at first, the government said they needed $800 million to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy. So if the government is setting aside the removal of subsidy in June, then why are we going ahead to acquire or accept this loan from the World Bank? Today, our debt profile is over 70 trillion naira. That's very high, and unprecedented. So for me, I think we need to have a more robust debate, and particularly the government needs to come clear that if we're taking this money for palliative or for the conditional cash transfer scheme, are we still going ahead to removing fuel subsidy? Because if you look at the Petroleum Industry Act, and even if you look at 2023 budget appropriation, it says by the end of June, we're going to stop for subsidizing PMS. And I think this is really important because when you look at how much we expend every day, over 50 billion naira subsidizing poor, and we all know that we're subsidizing rich people, not the poor. So if government is saying that the impact of removing fuel subsidy would impact the poor and increase inflation, particularly transportation cost, then we can have the debate about how we can ensure that this money or this loan from the World Bank is judiciously used. But if we're not removing fuel subsidy, then I beg to differ why we need to go and collect more loan. And mind you, if we remove fuel subsidy, we're going to have savings from subsidy. So again, it means that we necessarily do not have to continue to collect loan from multilaterals or international institutions like the World Bank.
All right. So, Mr. Obinaya, do you foresee, because earlier you spoke about the implication on the country's credit rating, but however, is there foreseeable impact on Nigeria's foreign investment?
Definitely. We're depleting, and thanks for that question, my brother. That's very, very critical. We're depleting our foreign reserves, and that didn't need to happen because, like my brother Hamzat has said, we're not just borrowing from one source, we're borrowing from multilateral agencies, World Bank, IMF, everybody that's available to give us loans. That's what has happened. And we're also borrowing from nations, China, France, just name them. The danger there is that you're toying with your sovereignty because it's also an image issue. You are campaigning to become a member of the Security Council of the United Nations. Now, what qualifies you to be there? It's about what would qualify you as a student of international relations is that you are financially buoyant, able to feed your people, you live better, and you're able to, like America, play the policeman of the world. So in spite of what we usually say that even America is in debt to China and a few countries, please go check the debt to revenue ratio of America. It's grossly very low. And then look at the Human Development Index of America compared to ours. And then just last night on the network news, what did I hear? That Angola has overtaken Nigeria as the highest producer of crude. Now, what are the implications? Yes, I try to balance my discussions usually like this to say that the issue of oil theft in the Niger Delta has also contributed to us not being able to meet our OPEC quota. And to the extent that we do not meet our OPEC quota, which is 1.8 million barrels per day, we are not able to earn as much as we should earn. But again, even if you sold the 1.8 million barrels per day, believing that the oil theft is reduced, yet you still have what we call double jeopardy, what fella will call double wahala for dead body. What is the implication? Sir, as long as you're selling cheap crude and you are importing refined crude, and then the exchange rate of Naira to the dollar keeps increasing, we're almost hitting how much? 740 in the parallel market. And let's stop deceiving ourselves saying that you have the official window. What do you mean by official window? And then again, you're confusing the market by having multiple exchange rates. You have 740 in the parallel market, what we call the black market. Then you say you have 400 and something. You're just, like Hamza said, feeding some fat cows. Because someone like Sanusi Lamido Sanusi once said, sits in a garden and can make almost double what he collected from the official window by just round-tripping the dollar. So we need to actually come to the table and tell ourselves, the Yorubas will tell you in a proverb, when two siblings walk into a room like this and come out smiling, they have lied to each other. And like Hamza said, we need to have a discussion on this issue. And I like the fact that he's in civil society. Rafsanjani pointed out, if you were bold enough, and I like what the president did, he was man enough to tell to his subordinates that if a new government is coming on board, why do you want to discuss issue of subsidy? Allow the new government to deal with it. And then if you have suspended the removal of subsidy, according to Rafsanjani, CISLAC, if you have suspended the removal of subsidy, then why the hurry to go collect it, as I said, it was 16 days? It's 15 days to the end of this administration. So why do you want to drink Panadol on another person's headache? Allow the new government to manage the issues, because they're the ones that will manage the issue. If you're going to remove it in June, let them deal with it. It's a new government. So this is my position. This is Project Nigeria. Every one of us has a stake in it. It's not only the people who have put there. We are the ones that pay tax and pay them their salaries that have a right to what happens to us. If this government has done 8 years, what I would recommend is that she has done well enough to the extent she has done, to the extent of their capacity to deal. Yeah? 3 things this government came in to do: security, anti-corruption, what else? Economy. We're not going to stay here to start analyzing what they have done. They have done well. To the extent they have the capacity to deal. Allow 15 days to pass and allow the new government to come on board and deal with these issues so that we don't keep having this tension to the last minute. Now you're having contracts being approved a few days at a time. You have 24.20 billion in the digital economy and what's that ministry? For internet access to where?
Economy. Well, maybe they're trying to deliver the dividends of democracy to Nigerians in the few days that they have left.
No, it's okay. Government is a continuum. Okay. But the sudden acceleration of approvals and so on is giving people concern. You have 109 billion for some other thing I heard the other day and so on. I'm not in government. I don't know what's going on inside there. But as a participant in Project Nigeria, don't I also have a right, don't you also have a right to say you had 7 and 6, almost 9 or 11 months to deal with all of this? What is that urgency in 15 days to go that we cannot say, okay, put these things in the handover notes, let the new government read it. Let us have town hall meetings like Minister of Information we usually would do, and let's discuss and say, okay, let's even do a SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for this economy called Nigerian economy. What are our strengths? We have 774 local government areas. Go to Smedan. I keep saying it like a broken record. There's a document that is sitting there. It's called One Local Government, One Product. It was initiated by Dupe Adelaja several years ago. Go and read it. That document says that every local government area has at least one commodity that she has comparative economic advantage on. Whether it is Denkeli, potato, Irish or sweet, or whether it is palm oil from Cross River or Akwa Ibom or from Ngopwala, or whether it is garri from my village in Ibego, in Abia State, or whether it is onions from Sokoto. As I speak, India had to pause the export of onions at some point because they had to look at it and say the more we export, the more we hurt our local economy. So are there some things that people need out there? Are you get what I'm saying? You are doing Africa Continental Free Trade Area, where we are the leader and Ghana took the headquarters. And we came in like number 30-something in signing and then domesticating. We have over 250 agreements signed out there that we have not domesticated. It's a lot of issues that I try not to get into adding to the misery index of Nigerians listening to us discuss this. But to be a little optimistic, sir, forgive me to use African proverb, I agree with my grandmother. The dog said that those who have yam don't know how to eat it. Because the dog as a carnivore has to struggle to kill and eat. But the goat just sits down and eats the goat. Is it that the barber does not know how to cut hair or that the clipper is blunt? Is it that Nigeria is really poor or that the managers of Nigerian economy need to actually answer some questions?
Well, indeed, a good question there. And the town hall thing you mentioned is also a smart one there. But let me throw this question at Hamza. So do you think, these handouts and palliatives that Nigerian government keeps giving, considering that, they're pushing that, it's all about getting rid of poverty and unemployment rate, but in the past, there's been a lot of funds that was, disbursed for program like the Empower, government enterprise and empowerment programs. We also have national homegrown school feeding program and trader money program. But the implementation of these programs was bad because there was a lot of allegations of fraud, and discrepancies in allocating this, that a lot of beneficiaries that were targeted did not receive that project money there. And right now they're bringing this that they call the National Social Safety Net Program. Do you think that this would work, or is this putting the country in a more like deep hole, like Dr. Obina said? And would it be, would the money reach these people that they want? Because they're talking about 50 million Nigerians and 10 million households. Would the money reach, or would this be an opportunity for the looters to also grab, more money on, for themselves?
If the government is transparent about the process and they become accountable, then it could work. I'll try to be fair to government here, because when I had to start the conditional cash transfer, I call it conditional cash payment, because if it was a transfer, it will move from one account to another, so there'll be money trail where you can follow the money. But when you withdraw cash and then you count and hand over to people hand by hand, then it's not a transfer, it's a payment. I remember we worked with the government in putting together a grievance mechanism where people who were meant to be beneficiaries, when they have grievances. I also, joined my colleagues at Connected Development, and we did some verification and also did some on-ground spots when these monies were being distributed. I was deployed to Anambra State at that time, where I witnessed beneficiaries collecting this palliative. But you see, the unfortunate thing is we missed an opportunity here. So I've traveled around the world. In Kenya, for instance, they have what you call M-Pesa, or you can call it mobile money, where with your mobile phone number, you can transact and pay for goods and services. And it keeps a footprint, a digital footprint. And for me, I say we lost an opportunity, because we could have used this money and invest in ensuring that when people are integrated into the banking or financial sector. Because when you look at the data, we just have less than 40% of the population that have accounts. So we could have even used this to get people or replicate what we have in Kenya, Nairobi, M-Pesa. Nobody has been prosecuted. Yes, there's been indictment, there's been petition, but nobody has been prosecuted. So again, when I'm glad my brother in the studio talk about the government saying that we're going to fight corruption. If you're going to fight corruption, then why are people not behind bars? And these are people who, the evidence that they've looted billions of public money, particularly meant for poor people. So yes, there's also question around the data about poor people. Because before 2019, people that were middle class are now poor. One, the impact of the economy. Two, the impact of COVID-19, the lockdown, and post-COVID-19. Mind you, we've dealt with numerous, as a country, I think we've dealt with 3 or 4 serious economic issues that led to recession. So people that are middle class 3 or 4 years ago, they're now in the poor class later. And what does that mean? They cannot even afford $1 a day, which is, depending on the exchange rate you want to use, but let's even leave it at 600 naira. People are now paying heavily from out of pocket to access healthcare. People cannot send their kids to school. And speaking about the homegrown school feeding program, yes, I know in Kano State, because I traveled there to do an assessment, there have been increasing enrollments in Kaduna and Kano because of the homegrown school feeding program. But it's also mad around corruption. The Kaduna State government undertook an independent investigation and caught some culprits and prosecuted them. We know that some vendors are asked to give kickback to some of these officials. There's so many information and knowledge about the corruption ongoing in homegrown school feeding program. All of this initiative by government is brilliant, but how they implemented it and how there was no honesty, there were no transparency and accountability. First is in even creating raising awareness of citizens, but also taking citizens along and providing real-time information. So again, people always question, what are the sources of this data? How do you say these people are poor? And is this also co-created by communities, by civil society, by religious organization, that are taxpayers, and that would pay, all of this loan that Nigeria is indebted in?
Okay, so Doctor, another question I want to ask. You spoke so much earlier to the extent that you started dishing out proverbs. And you talked about the document at Smedan and quite a lot of other issues. But I want you to also be specific, because I understand that our viewers also would be interested in knowing how much impact, going forward or going further to acquire such loans, even after incurring such huge debt burden, would have on our debt to GDP.
Okay, thank you. In fact, before you ask the question, I was saying, like I said, I don't want to add to the misery index. So I would like to talk about solutions.
Okay.
We already know what the impact is. We know the impact. The impact, you asked the question, the impact on our ability to, even if we needed to borrow further. Because let me also explain that there's nothing wrong in borrowing. The question is, what do you borrow for? Do you borrow for production or for consumption? So if you're borrowing for production, then you're thinking about infrastructure. And this government has done the second Niger Bridge, the East-West Road, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Almost every state has at least one thing or the other that has been built. So let's give them some accolades. That's me being fair. And there's no way this government can work for 8 years and not do anything. We've seen Minister Fashola on the road. We've seen other ministers come up with different things. So let's be fair. However, I still believe that things could have been done better. And then I still want to know, to the extent that the government consulted over 7 years and 11 months, the people in the private sector, the people in the media. I've seen the town hall meetings happen. What kinds of engagements? There are 3 things you do in leadership. Stakeholders mapping. Stakeholders mapping. Who are the stakeholders in Project Nigeria? Media, civil society, private sector, and a few other persons who will be impacted by whatever decisions you take. The next one is stakeholders engagement. It's like you're trying to woo a lady to become your wife. What do? You get involved, engage in small talk, and then discussions happen, and there's an agreement of minds, and then you end up to the point where you put a ring on her finger. Then the next one is stakeholders management. When you are finally married, the lady, you have to deal with in-laws, deal with community people, deal with school fees, rent, and so on. So now take it back to the economy. When you have won an election, you are now doing stakeholders management. You're dealing with the party, then you're dealing with the people, you're dealing with the international community. The president attended the UNGA 77. Now he just went for the coronation of the king. I saw on TV last night the Nigeria-UK dialogue, and when I listened to the people from Foreign Affairs speak, they were talking about what are the benefits from this engagement with the UK. Yeah? So the impact is already known. It's negative. But why is it negative? And don't push me back to the Proverbs again, but if you force me, I will say, my people say, a bad ground is good ground for the native doctor. And who is the native doctor? The native doctor is the solution provider. The person that has trained eyes, able to get into the bushes and know which leaf you put in the mouth of Somaya and you will not poison her, but it will cure malaria. Which shrub can cure leg pain? Now, what it means is that there is nobody, no country that does not have her own resources. Now, Donald Trump kept saying, America first. What was America first? At the point you faced a galloping China that is coming at you, you needed to look inward so that you're not at the mercy of having China as a factory of the world. And when COVID happened, it hit everyone that we were all producing in China. So everybody needed to look inwards. So rather than drinking custard, why don't you drink akamu? Or is the maize no longer growing in Gombe? Or you can no longer process the onions, or you cannot turn the zobo leaf somewhere in Kaduna or Niger State to the drink that we drink. Must you drink the champagne from China? So you have a situation where even we, too, the followers, need to also ask ourselves the question, what clothes do we wear? There's a reason why I'm dressed the way I'm dressed. It's cultural. I'm leaving for Rwanda to speak at the Africa Soft Power Project Summit. And I saw a clip there that discussing culture. And I'm going to ask them a few questions I asked in Burundi. What is the culture of the Rwandese? And just leadership. They've said you do not put state of origin or religion on any form in Rwanda. See, a simple decision by Rwanda because of their experience. We also had the same experience with the Civil War. So if you look at our economy, really, if you look at what Michael Okpara did in East Central State, just to answer you how we can deal with this issue, one morning, Michael Okpara woke up and the security man said, sir, someone is blocking our gate. I said, okay, why is he blocking the gate? And Michael Okpara, being a leader, did not send police to arrest the man and lock him up in DSS. He called the man and said, okay, sir, what's the issue? He said, sir, I'm a farmer, a poultry farmer. As I speak to you, because of the policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, in not giving enough time, as much as, yes, they've given some years to say, okay, everybody get accounts and all of that. Why don't we have accounts open? You have coppers, 600,000 coppers mobilized every year in 4 batches. I work with the NYSC. I can tell you authoritatively. Why can't those core members commit class suicide, come down from their high horse, degrees all over the place? That's all we do, pack certificates. Come down and engage the old woman in the village and open an account for her in the nearest bank. So why do we have less than 40% of our people outside the financial system? Let's not go there. So let's stay exactly on what I told you. If you look at what we are not doing, Michael Okpara did it several years ago, ma. It is called the farm settlement system. That's why you have Umudike, where you have the university now. So he called the man and said, okay, what is the issue? And the man said, sir, you said we should go and do poultry. Meanwhile, like I said, the Poultry Farmers Association said that over 60% of their members lost their eggs. Because who was going to transfer money for 18 naira egg? You can see the implications of not thinking a matter through before you implement it. You're going to hurt somebody's economy. Okay. Now, so Michael Okpara, in a nutshell, you know what he did? Called the man and said, okay, what is the issue? He said, sir, you say we should do poultry. We have done poultry, the eggs are here. But people are not buying eggs. Because traditionally and culturally in Igbo land, if you eat one egg, you're a thief. Culturally, an egg is tantamount to one chicken. So you had to deal with the mindset that prevented people from buying eggs. In a nutshell, as I round up, what he now did was he made a policy that said, okay, include egg in the menu of schools so that in the dormitories they could replace meat with egg. That singular policy, sir, is the reason our mothers and many people had poultry at the backyard. And that's what catapulted and activated the poultry business in the East. A simple policy like that, with Federal Ministry of Agric and talking to every local government area, you have the federal, the sub-national, state, and the local government areas. We're busy talking about federal government. Your state governments and your local government areas, how well are they even implementing the budget?
All right.
And they're blowing the debt body.
All right.
Interesting.
That's quite...
Okay, I think we'll move to Hamza quickly because of time constraint. Of course, Hamza, should the National Assembly, implement or agree, sign off this loan for it to be collected? Yes or no?
The National Assembly should call for a public hearing. Invite the Minister of Finance, invite the Budget Office, invite the Debt Management Office, invite civil society and the Nigerian citizen. Let's have a public debate and let them answer very salient questions. Then we can proceed.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so
Hamza.
much.
Dr. Obinaya, what about you?
I go with my brother Hamza. He knows I will go with him.
All right.
Let's have a public hearing.
Okay.
I think we have a unanimous agreement there. Hamza Lal, the Chief Executive of Connected Development. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning. And also Dr. Obin Naya Urakpa, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much for your submissions. And also Proverbs on the program. I believe you were a delight to watch. Thank you so much for your contributions on the program.